I've been the president at Cathedral High School 15 years, and there are a lot of almost mythical figures in my time at Cathedral High School, and Coach John Kesterson is one of those.
Coach Kesterson was one of those gentlemen who was truly a gentleman. He would coach, anybody. He coached a lot of volleyball, obviously, but he could coach the guys. He could go in classrooms and be able to role model for students in the classroom as well.
Mr. Coach K was the example for all of us to live because of the way he treated people. Every day he was an inspiration and just a pillar of advice and stability for the people around him.
I've known Coach John K since he arrived here at Cathedral High School as an assistant coach for his daughter, which is a very unique situation in itself. When I think of John, I think of the life lessons that he taught me, and just through my observation of him. John was a great teacher, and most of the lessons he taught were not in the form of a classroom setting and a lecture and feedback. It's just he taught by modeling some great virtues that the man had. When I was thinking of it, I came down to basically 3 virtues that I learned from Coach John Kesterson: work ethic, perseverance, and humility.
One word that comes immediately to mind when I think about Coach Kesterson, it is courage. He battled many things in his life, loss of loved ones and poor health, and certainly at the end his health was a real challenge. And I think any of us who knew him, and certainly the young women who had the great opportunity to play for him, will always remember how courageous he was, how he faced adversity, and he was truly a role model for all of us.
He was always here early. He was always prepared. He was dressed ready to help the students before practice started. So when he had a lot of the freshman girls in volleyball, well before the girls got out of school at the end of the day, and well before they were coming in ready to stretch and all that, Coach Kesterson was there for them.
And we created a tradition that I, being the honorary serving coach of Cathedral, would go in and I'd meet his freshman girls early on, and I'd serve them off the court, so to speak, and then he would have them all ready, and we would sing the fight song, and it was just a nice tradition that we created, and we did that again this year in his memory.
He was much more than a coach. He was much more than a teacher. He was someone who would give everything he had, and he had a lot. He had a lot of knowledge. He had wonderful ideas about how to prepare for a practice in a game. He has a fantastic knowledge of playing the game of volleyball. But the greatest thing about John Kesterson was he was always accessible, he was always available, and he was always friendly, whether you were a student, whether you're an administrator, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a visitor from the school. He was always there to give you his friendly thoughts and his great insights.
I remember after he had his leg amputated and he would drive himself up here, he would get the wheelchair out of the car and he would wheel himself up here with one leg, but he was bound and determined because he knew those kids needed him. It gave him a purpose in life. And I'm sitting there, I remember thinking to myself, how easy would it be for him to just say, you know what, I only have one leg now, so everybody will understand if I just don't coach today. Never, ever, ever would he miss a day where he was physically capable of coming up here.
We got to become fast friends. We talk at games and just banter each other like 2 old men would do. And then as he got more and more ill in the last couple months, I would go to his home and we would visit. And we would talk about gardening and how to take care of our roses and how beautiful our wives were, and how much his wife meant to him.
Perseverance obviously is how he persevered through all the health situations that he had in his life. Again, the man was remarkable. He was absolutely remarkable. And when I would see him come up here and engage with especially the freshman girls on the volleyball team, and here's an elderly gentleman with these, and freshman girls can be a pretty tough audience to work with, but he was always fully engaged. I think on purpose, he used to talk in a very low volume. Some of it I realized it was related to his health condition, but he would talk in a very low volume, and you would see the freshman girls huddled around him, and they would all lean in and listen. And that was his way of engaging them, so that he knew that they were listening to what he had to say.
I just wanted to tell a story about Coach Mr. K, about a time that my daughter was with him when we got to do Irish Juniors Volleyball Club. And I had the privilege of having him as a coach and also work with his daughter Mary. And I know I speak on behalf of all the families that were involved, how much we were very proud to have him as a coach. And going into this particular weekend tournament that we went into, he had just recovered from having his leg amputated, and he's 85 years old, coaching 16 girls in club, and 2 Emily's on the team, 2 Gabby's on the team, and he had to do libero and had to do substitution, and only 12 of them were allowed, and I think for him to keep track of all this was a lot. And I know after we did the warm-up drill, which I helped with, I was sitting down and Mary looked up at me like, get up here right now. So I went up there to help them, and the 2 of them had been bantering back and forth with each other. And I know he was trying to run a 5-1 and that Mary was more familiar with, and he really wanted to run a 6-2, and he would go back and forth, and everyone was a little confused what was going on, and I think he was confused too. And when the push came to shove and the game got serious, he just went back to reverting back to the 6-2. So everyone was a little confused, but we would always roll with what was going on. But he definitely, once he went to 6-2, he's like, that's it, we can get this going now. And when he would go to call timeout, because he had his walker with him at the time, he'd kind of make a movement like this, and then he'd start walking to the court. Well, the rest would look at us like, what is that? Timeout, timeout, timeout. So they would quickly learn that it's timeout. When he makes one movement, just goes, it's timeout. And of course, everyone respected him in doing that. And I think the bottom line that I just thought of the most with him is just his amount of laughter, his strong leadership that he was able to do, and the amount of laughter that he provided with it. Just himself doing that, and everyone respected him and looked up to him so much, but how funny it was at the same time. So you could be led by a man like that and just have so much laughter at the same time.
We are Grandpa's 3 favorite grandkids. Danielle, I played for him in '98.
I'm Christine, I played in '99. I'm Lauren, I played in '97.
And I'm sure we tested his patience quite a bit. I remember always forgetting my uniform, knee pads, and we had homework. And but we always rode home, and he always told us how good of a job we did for that day, if we did good.
All the time.
All the time.
Every day. I remember our practice where we dressed up all wacky, and I remember that Grandpa got into it, and that was pretty fun. I also remember my poor teammates having to run laps while I tried to serve into a certain zone.
I think probably the thing I'm going to miss most is our rides home. Just sometimes not talking because we were mad at each other, or listening to music, but also watching him play in a practice, because it seemed like he always had it down to a science almost, just down to the second that practice was over. And sometimes I remember wishing that maybe we would end early, but no, that never seemed to happen. But that's probably some of the things I'll miss most.
My favorite memory of Coach Mr. K is when he would always ask me for my chocolate chip cookies.
He's coached me since I was in 7th grade, so for Irish Juniors, he always made practices fun and that environment just a better place. I remember my first tryout at Cathedral, coming in as a freshman. He brought Tara and I over and told us that his middles do not play background. So we spent quite a while peppering on the side.
My personal story about Mr. Coach K is I had a habit of always crossing my arms and I got mad, and so he would always come up to me and be like, why are you so mad at yourself? And I'd be like, what? And so now I never cross my arms. do I think of him.
Also, when you got mad, he would like, if you were mad at yourself, he'd tell you, he like do you guys remember he like do that?
Oh,
He'd,
yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
To get rid of bad thoughts, like just forget about it.
Yeah.
Just move on, next point.
Always smile.
Always smile.
Well, I also thought it was really cool how he's like 85, 86, and you know, like amputated leg and everything, and he's still out there like doing what he loves. It's pretty inspiring.
And he would always like talk about how he was gonna get the other leg amputated and how he's gonna be walking, but like he kind of never did. But he still like wanted to. Like
He always persevered throughout.
Yeah.
And he had dreams. At the
And
age
when
of,
he did like have his walker and stuff, and he'd be standing there, sometimes he'd fall, and like you'd go to help him, but he's like, no, I got it, and he'd get up by himself.
Yeah, we'd all be like so scared. We'd be like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And then he'd just be like, I'm fine. You guys go back to what we're doing.
Honestly, he was a really big inspiration, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
Because of what he taught us when we were on his team.
Mr. Coach K was such an amazing man. He knew so much about the game of volleyball, and his dedication was just unbelievable, and the time he put into researching what the best thing for the team was in regards to defense or offensive play. He was always on top of it. One story that I actually have from my experience with Mr. Coach K as a coach was I was playing in a game, libero in a game at Cathedral actually, and I came out for just about 2 to 3 seconds, but he wanted to tell me what I needed to change on my defense, so he decided to draw me a picture of where he wanted me to stand on the court to help me visualize really what he wanted from me, and I missed my cue to get back in the game.
Mr. Coach Kesterson was such an amazing, amazing man. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Kesterson loved the defensive specialists, which fortunately included me. You would often hear him call us his favorites. Even though we were his favorites, that didn't mean he was easy on us. Quite the opposite, actually. One thing that he was so good at was making us all feel very special and motivating us, but also constantly challenging us to be the best we could be on and off the court. I was lucky to spend a lot of time with him during my days at Cathedral, both on the freshman and varsity teams and after graduating while coaching summer camps. I have such great memories in the old gym with him. Even though it was hot, we had so much fun. Mr. Coach K will always have a special place in my heart. He was such a great role model, and I know he impacted so many of us. I am blessed that he was a part of my life story, and I can only hope to be able to teach my kids some of the life lessons that he taught me.
My favorite memory of Mr. Coach K was his strong and silent confidence. He just had this calming energy about him, and I always had such a deep respect for the love that he had for his wives.
When I was in school and playing volleyball with part of the Cathedral volleyball family, I just remember his phenomenal positive energy. I don't think that any of us at the time as high school students can really appreciate the effect that the whole Kesterson family and the Cathedral volleyball family had on our lives, but I just know that the sense of hard work and working together and positive attitude towards a goal just phenomenally changed my life, and I'm just so happy to have known him.
My favorite thing about Mr. Coach K was how he was so in love with the sport, and how like even after both of his surgeries he'd still come into the gym like all bundled up in blankets and we just talk like volleyball strategies together. That's my I loved how passionate he was about coaching and just how excited he would get just to watch us play.
My favorite thing about Mr. Coach K was that no matter what he was going through, he always had a smile on his face. He could always make other people smile. He was just a really great guy, and he impacted me in a lot of ways.
I love Mr. Coach K because he genuinely cared about us, and he was the kind of coach you want to give 110% for because he deserved it. He was an inspiration of courage.
My favorite thing about Mr. Coach K is his dedication to the game, and his encouragement.
My favorite thing about Mr. Coach K was he always knew how to make a bad day good. No matter the situation you were going through, he was just always there for you, and I just love that about him.
Playing for Mr. Coach K was great. I have so many good memories of that year. When I came to high school, I was a basketball player, and hadn't played a lot of volleyball, didn't have a lot of experience. Luckily I was pretty athletic, and I remember being kind of bummed that I made the freshman team because a lot of my friends were making JV, and I don't know, I remember kind of being kind of sad about it, but it ended up being one of the best things that happened to me. Playing for Mr. Coach K was truly a blessing and a gift. He was a great guy and a great coach, and I think he had that balance between knowing a lot about volleyball and being very knowledgeable, and also being just knowing a lot about life. He really made a point to make sure that we were turning into wonderful young ladies as well as good volleyball players.
My favorite memory of Mr. Coach K was in the All-Star game for Tara and Olivia. He and Coach Law's mom were sitting off to the side talking about the game. And I went over there and talked to him, and he was just so enthusiastic to talk to me about it. And he was like, what do you think about this? And what about this? And why did they just do this? It was so cool to feel the energy and how much he loved it.
Yeah, my favorite memory was whenever you'd see him on the court, he wanted to be there. There's nowhere else he'd rather be. And that was just you just got excited when you saw him. You just wanted to play for him and play your hardest.
Yeah, and he loved volleyball the whole time. Remember when we went to
the nursing home?
Yeah, and he was so excited. It was we all went in, he's like, my girls!
And you saw all his notes on the bed.
Yeah, and he the videos that he had set up, that he would watch it at all times. It was awesome.
One of the things I'm always going to value about my relationship with John Kesterson is how much of a mentor he was to not only myself when I was a manager here 4 or 5 years ago, but how much he mentored me as a coach over summers here.
Coach Kesterson was a wonderful man. His love for his family and his Catholic values are examples to all of us. The dedication that he gave for the CYO sports is something that will be remembered forever. I had the opportunity to play for Coach Kesterson, and all of the things that he brought to the table are still traits that I keep with me today. His even temper, his growth of athletes, and his competitiveness. I still thank him today for, at one point in time, changing me from a setter to a hitter. And I know Jean and I laugh about that a lot. I know Coach Kesterson will be missed by many people, but I know as long as there are people in the gym, that he will also be there and be remembered forever.
Mr. Coach K, I've known him for 20 years, and he was the example of how we should live our lives. And I know he's gone, but he will be with me in my memories as long as I'm here. And all I can say is it's quite an honor just to know Mr. Coach K, and he will be with me forever.
The memories that John Kesterson has left this program and the legacy he's left behind here is something that will be unmatched for years to come. I know that his shoes are already huge to fill for the freshman program, and his hole is present in this program, but he's not really gone. John will never be gone. The legacy of Mr. Coach K lives on.
The one that keeps coming back to me as the most outstanding virtue that I witnessed would be humility. With Coach John Kesterson, it was always about the kids. It was the kids, the kids, the kids. His coaching record, the program's overall record, it was just about taking these kids and making them better. I used to say to him at the start of each year when I would see him out of practice, I'd say, Coach, you got any good volleyball players this year? And he, every year, would say, no, that's our job. You give us really great kids to work with. It's our job as coaches to make them good volleyball players. And again, it was all about the kids. I used to remember seeing through all the championships won, both at his level with freshman tournaments, or the JV when he helped out with that, or the varsity and the numerous state championships that were there. Coach John K was obviously there, but he would always have to be pulled into the picture, pulled into the championship picture, pulled in to getting one of the medals around his neck, because it was always about the kids and it was never about John Kesterson.
It's going to be weird without Mr. Coach K here this season, because he's been with us for so many seasons.
I'm glad that we're dedicating this season to him because he touched all of our lives and we owe it to him.
I didn't know Mr. Coach K
for very long, but through the stories and the lessons, I feel like I've known him a really long time. I know that he will be dearly missed here at the program, but I also know that he will always be with us, in spirit and in our hearts.
We had kind of a special bond that we could kind of tell what each other was thinking and saying. So I was just privileged enough to know him as a great man and as a mentor and someone that I always looked up to, always look forward to seeing.
John Kesterson is a great man. I count him as a role model in my life. I count him as a teacher for me in my life, and I just hope that I can be half the man that John Kesterson was going forward and working with the kids here at Cathedral High School.
We miss you and will always remember you.
I can be